Welcome back to the second segment of the December 2nd Trips and Traps. Andy Serling, Eric Donovan.
Now, it's a mouthful there. We got 3 more races to bring you, all fillies, a couple of stakes races. Why don't we get to the top flight from Friday? We're going to look at Porte Bonheur and Cuvée Uncorked, I should say. And this was a real nice field from top to bottom, I thought.
Yeah, it was a really nice performance by the first and second horses. And first of all, Porte Bonheur is in those noticeable pinkish purple silks. She stumbles fairly badly, at the start here, and it puts her out of position. Now, she didn't lose a great deal of ground because of the stumble, and ultimately, I don't know where she was going to finish, and maybe a mile's too far for her, and maybe she's going to be retired after this race. I'm not really sure what's going to happen with her, but wanted to show her. I thought Cuvée Uncorked was sort of more interesting in that she was making a step forward from some nice allowance races to stake races, and I thought she actually ran okay here.
Yeah, I think she did. I thought the first quarter mile of the race here for Porte Bonheur was especially difficult. You see her throwing her head up in the air a few times. It's very rank. Channing's trying to get back into a good position here. You don't want to rush up, and you don't want to have to steady on horses' heels, but that's kind of what happened here. And, I don't know how much that affects. I think that affects horses differently. It's on a horse-by-horse basis how much that's going to affect their finish. But certainly, this horse did some running to get back into contention here. It was a little rank, and will still be around at the end of the race to finish up okay. And you have Cuvée Uncorked, who's running a big race in the process, too.
Yeah, and she was right there up on the pace with Sprightly and the 4 horses in front right now. And then the rider, was a rider from out of town, I guess, sort of dropped back. And that's not the worst move in the world. The problem is she ends up getting sort of buried inside. Now, eventually, she'll extract herself from that. But as you have, she's not being Sarah Louise anyways. It turns out she's not being Just Wixell Dixie. Nobody was being those two today. But she gets sort of caught inside when she wants to move. She's jammed in. She's got Porte Bonheur outside of her, and Channing Hill did a good job with her patiently waiting behind horses, and it takes a little while for her to clear. But when Porte Bonheur does finally clear, which is right in here, if she had enough run, she was going to get closer. Close she didn't. I thought Cuvée Uncorked a little bit jammed in there that might have affected her.
Yeah, I agree. I think both horses ran well, and especially when you give horses like Sarah Louise and Just Wixell Dixie, who were better on paper in this race anyway, when you give them the jump on you in the stretch, they haven't had particularly taxing trips. They're going to be very tough to beat. So I thought both the horses that we looked at here ran well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we'll see. I don't know what Porte Bonheur is doing, whether she comes back. Cuvée Uncorked, I'm sure, will be coming back. I would assume she's only run about 5 times, and I think the first 2 are pretty good. We'll see. We'll see probably them next year. I know Sarah Louise is coming back. I can't imagine Just Wixell Dixie. They spent all this time getting her back to the races, only retire after 1 race. So we'll see her again. A good race. And you know what? The Demoiselle actually turned out, and we'll show that next, to be a much better race than we thought, and especially that it looked on paper, and especially relative to the Remsen. We'll discuss that. I thought the eventual second-place finisher, Protesting, is a horse that has a future here for Sugar Gay. I like the way she ran in here. I'll tell you something, though. The eventual winner in this race, the 4-horse, Edgar Prado, won this race at the start with a surprisingly aggressive move towards the lead. He's right up there between horses. Now, he takes back when the other 2 horses go, but he gets her in a great spot. I'm not knocking Eddie Castro and Protesting. She's more of a horse that's going to lag behind, but I would have been surprised to see the 2 horses close together. Prado was aggressive early. That's when he won the race. But Protesting runs really well, especially when you consider the pace.
Yeah, when you consider the pace, I think you're absolutely right, because you're going to see them come down the stretch, and Protesting is going to be chasing the winner of the 4 Tizza Hit home and just can't gain. Now, if it wasn't for Prado's decisiveness going into the first turn there to get a good spot, to be kind of forwardly placed and be inside, I don't know if that would have been the case here. So you still got about a 2.5-3 length advantage here that Tizza Hit has over Protesting, and I think that makes a big difference when they come down the stretch.
Yeah, I think it does too. And also, it's important to remember this race had, I think, a slightly faster first quarter than the Remsen did. Then the half was almost the same, but the final times were virtually identical. The Remsen was run 0.14 seconds faster, which lowers Buddy Saint in my estimation. But also, they went 1:15 the 6 furlongs here. The Remsen went 1:13. They really backed it up this third quarter, and that works against Protesting, even though she's only about 2 lengths behind the eventual winner. But all things considered, I thought she ran pretty well, and this race was run a lot faster than I thought it would have been.
Yeah, I agree, and she's an AP Indy too, and she should just be getting better with time. I would think that next year, she's going to take a big leap forward sometime in the spring, and you see, right here what we were talking about earlier on, and just the advantage that Tizza Hit had here from being a little bit more forwardly placed and Protesting. Protesting put to an all-out drive here, and Tizza Hit still got something left because of what Prado did at the start of the race.
Yeah, she also drifts about 5 paths late in the stretch and herds out Protesting, but, that is what it is, and you can see it a little here, you can see it more of that on. But I agree, the whole thing came down to positioning in the race. It's not surprising they ran away from the others. They were better than the other horses in here. But Protesting, no knock knock on the winner ticket, but I thought protesting. I know we tend to see some of these Phipps horses, Magay horses, and they'll get over bet, but I think she might prove to be okay, especially going longer.
All right, we'll see what happens with her next year, and we'll take one more look at another race here in Trips and Traps. This is the 6th race from November 29th, a special weight for 2-year-old fillies. 8-horse Sortilege, a first-time starter from John Kimmel's barn. Got a lot of money here, and it didn't really break all that great. I can't say really broke slowly, but maybe a half a beat slowly or something like that. But you got to keep in mind where Sortilege is now at this point in the race, and then what she does throughout the rest of the way here. The field right now, if you watch the head-on, is about 3 or 4 paths off the rail, even the inside horses. So she's way out there. She's in about the 8 or 9 path here, and they just start to come a little bit closer to the rail as they move into the, move on to the main course and get out of the chute here. But Sortilege, all back here, about 5 lengths back at this point, is going to make a sustained move to the front end here. And then I think what's going to happen midway through the backstretch or even closer to the far turn is that Richie Migliori realizes, well, I'm going to get hung out even wider here if I don't do anything. I'm on a horse that supposed to run a little bit here. Let me try to get her into contention, and that's what he does here. Pushes on the gas a little bit. She starts moving up, but she's going to end up vying 4 wide around the turn here. First time starter going a mile with this kind of trip. I don't know. I think it's a pretty tough thing to ask first time out.
I have 2 words to say: rumpus room.
Well, the race sets up for Rumpus Room.
What about Rumpus Room's other 4 races?
I'm not saying Rumpus Room is any good, but look at what's going on here in the front end. You got the 2 horses, the 3 and the 7, who have been out there the whole way. The 6 and Sortilege are making 3, 4 wide moves. This is the point in the race where a move's being made, and Rumpus Room is sitting right in behind that in the green and red and the green and pink cap right there, really getting a perfect trip to this point. Yeah, Rumpus Room, not much horse on paper, but when you get a setup like this, you could expect something to go right every now and then.
Well, yes and no. It's not like the race completely fell apart. I mean, the winner, Tia, is the horse on the engine the whole while. I do think Sortilege ran okay in this race. She was so heavily bet, though, and frankly, the fact that she couldn't stay on and hold off Rumpus Room, you and I just disagree about this race. I think, and I shouldn't say this because I get mad if you say I predict this race is going to be a key race. I predict this race is going to be a negative key race.
Yeah, only loses by a head to Rumpus Room there in the finish, but I thought considering the different trips both those horses had, going forward, I'd much rather have Sortilege than Rumpus Room. Thank you very much, Mr. Obvious.
That's good to know. Anyway, that does it for this week's Trips and Traps. We appreciate your watching. We love to hear your thoughts. Trips and Traps at NYRAinc.com. We'll see you next week.